23.9. This meeting is being live streamed. Got it. It is setting it up, it appears, and then in just a minute, we'll go ahead and we'll go live on, oh, wrong button. We'll go ahead and we'll go live on Zoom. So if you're good with it, I'll go ahead and click the go live button. We'll give it 4 or 5 minutes and we'll see who's able to join, and then I'll tweet out the location of the YouTube stream, put it in Telegram, Slack, etc.
Perfect.
All right, cool. Let's go ahead and click the start webinar button because it just turned time. I love how the streaming app tells you that recording is in progress, just on the off chance you don't know that what you have to say is being recorded and will be used in the future against you. So for those of you who are joining, welcome. So glad to see you. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. We're going to let some more people join. I'm going to tweet about the fact that we are live, and we'll kick off here in just a moment.
Welcome. So many people are joining, and it was always interesting to see who is joining first. And the first was Stefan Baxter. And the second was Ricky. So hi, Stefan. Hi, Ricky. And then our usual suspects, Nikolai Loginov, Ellen Tal. Welcome, Ellen. Interesting about your feature that you want to release, hopefully soon. Welcome, Dennis, Marcela, Todd, Tsovak Sahayan. Welcome, Todd Yakum. So many people, and we will start maybe in 3 minutes. So we have Zoom, we have YouTube streaming. If your friends don't use Zoom, just post a link to YouTube and they will receive my webinar with a slight delay, like 3 seconds. And if you have questions, you can post in Zoom chat, in Zoom Q&A, and on YouTube. And we have Tyler today with me. Hi, Tyler, again.
Hey, looks like I've let people know that we're live in all the places, so we should see a couple more people continue to roll in over time here. And also, as you said, shout out to Stefan, thank you. And the Q&A feature is there. Please feel free to also just use chat. It should be set up so that you can chat with everyone. I'll double check that right now. If you're watching on YouTube, we're keeping an eye on it. Please feel free to use the Q&A box as you choose. Or, you know, there'll be a long thread on Twitter as well. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, I just want to set the stage for a second. We've argued about what this is called. First of all, it's not a webinar, because webinar is a terrible term and implies like humans in suits trying to sell you something.
Not so terrible. And it depends on the suit. I have a nice suit.
I have a nice, yeah, I'm wearing my blazer. It just happens to be made out of denim and entirely too large. We've referred to this as the ClickHouse community call. We hold it monthly. In this month's iteration, we're going to talk about 23.9. You can probably guess where that name comes from. It's based on calendar day, which is the new release. But also we set aside time at the end for question and answer. And we encourage you that this is intended and purposefully an interactive session. So as you have questions, as you have chats, please feel free to reach out. And to someone who just dropped in, Zafar, you are joining us for the first time and you mentioned it in Slack, welcome, or in chat, welcome. So glad that you're here. So with that said, I've seen the content. There's quite a bit to cover. So let's go ahead and Alexei, would you mind taking it away and introducing us to 23.9?
Sure. Let me start. So ClickHouse 23.9. what it is. It is just a ClickHouse release for September. But we have so many features in this release. I'm even not sure if I will have time to cover all of this. So let's see. 18 new features, 19 performance optimizations, and 51 bug fixes. So let's start with something pretty small and boring. Let's start with the most boring feature in ClickHouse 23.9. Actually, we don't have boring features, but okay, first, drop table if empty. If empty is a new modifier for drop table, and the whole purpose of this feature is to show you an error, throw exception. It will throw exception if the table is not empty, and drop it only if it is empty. Okay, pretty obvious, boring. Let's go on. Another feature, show functions. And guess what? It will show you ClickHouse functions. How many functions are in ClickHouse? I don't recall. Maybe 1,500, something like this. And now it is actually fully equivalent to select star from system functions. But now there is another way to write it. And we have it in 23.9 because why not? Because we can. Okay, also boring. Let's go on. And this is slightly less boring. Auto detection, disambiguation between JSON and JSONEachRow. You know what is JSON? It is just an object. It starts from curly brace, then contains something, then ends. But if you have multiple JSON objects, there are several names for this format. It can be named JSON lines, new line delimited JSON, or JSONEachRow. It just contains multiple JSONs, not necessarily every on its own line, maybe on several lines, and ClickHouse has perfect support for this format. If you have a file with JSON-L or ND-JSON extension, it will be processed as new line delimited JSON. You can also specify the format manually, and it will work as well. But if the file is just JSON, it was unclear how to parse it. There is a single JSON format in ClickHouse that contains data field, metadata field, some statistics, the number of records. So good for some REST API. And also there is new line delimited JSON for large volumes of data for import and export. Okay, thankfully in ClickHouse 23.9, it is detected automatically. Just use a file with JSON extension and no problems. I hope you will find it useful. So what else? What else for JSON? It is about how errors are processed and displayed. Let's take a look at ClickHouse previous release, 23.8. And let's make some query through the REST API with curl. I will send this query. It is pretty easy in ClickHouse, and I will make this query intentionally to throw error after it processed some data with this function throw if. And I get an exception like this. This error message is perfectly fine. It is nice as expected, but there is one little problem. I asked it to output data in format JSON. Instead, it output exception as is. So not as good as it could be. Let's compare to ClickHouse 23.9, the same query with curl format JSON, and it is actually a JSON. It's a huge achievement. And it's good for your scripts. You get the same error, but inside a field in the JSON output. Okay, this is maybe not for everyone, but I hope you will understand. Why do we need this? I would say feature. It is difficult to classify. Sometimes I am thinking it is a feature. We support arbitrarily long column names. But sometimes I'm thinking it is improvement because why we did not support it yet. Sometimes I'm thinking it's a bug fix because some people might think it is a bug in the previous version. So let's take a look. I will create a table with this column name. How to translate it? If you can translate it, please write in comments. But please don't use ChatGPT, don't cheat, and we will see if you can read this. Yeah, this is just a column name. It is possible to use Unicode characters, white spaces, full width characters, whatever. And if I do this query, actually everything will be all right, unless the data will be tried to merge in background. But if I also specify this setting, so it will generate a full part format that is usually generated on merges, it will show you this error. File name is too long. And indeed, yeah, it is too long. How to deal with it? Just use ClickHouse 23.9. It is so much better. But don't forget to enable this setting for merge 3. Hopefully this setting will be by default in subsequent versions. In this version, we just made it possible. So this setting and everything works just fine. It is so nice. But why do you need these long column names? There are two answers. First answer, maybe you are using some business intelligence tools, some automation, and this automation actually does this. Another answer, these column names can be auto-generated in projections that you created for your table with complex expressions. Like you did alter table, add projection, select, and something really complex with multiple functions. And in previous versions, shamefully, it did not work. Now it works. So what about the translation, Tyler? Sorry, you are muted.
I am indeed. So that's exactly what I was going to mention is we actually had a translation come in from YouTube, and shout out to Zhong Luo, that says the Chinese here means that ClickHouse is an excellent DBMS. It's fast and its code is easy to read.
Yeah, this translation looks correct. I don't know Chinese, but I confirm everything that you have said. Thank you.
We may not know Chinese, but we know ClickHouse, and it is indeed fast, an excellent DBMS, and its code is easy to read.
Good. Okay, this feature is for those of you who used to process HTML with ClickHouse. You know some proverbs like Never process HTML with regular expressions, or never process HTML. But actually, it is very good to process HTML with ClickHouse. Let's take a look. What is this? It can be a fragment from HTML or XML. And this is an entity, XML entity. And since a long time ago, we have a function decodeHTMLComponent. It works perfectly. In the new version, we have a similar function, decodeHTMLComponent, and it can decode any named entities. HTML has a plenty of these, and it will translate to UTF-8, and it will output ClickHouse in this fancy way. So thanks, Harat Nalan, for this wonderful feature. I dreamed about this feature a lot because I want to process HTML in ClickHouse for fun. I want to download all the internet into ClickHouse, so the internet will be compressed, and I can put it into my server and browse internet using ClickHouse client. Okay, another feature, functions that are difficult to read but easy to use. Conversion of numeric date variants that look like numbers, but actually decimal text representation of a date or date time. It's quite popular. High chances you already have it from some other system. And now it is easy. Just use this function. I will not even try to pronounce, but the usage is self-explanatory. What else for date and time? This is way more interesting, and if you wanted this feature, please let me know, because I guess so many people waited for so long for ClickHouse Release 23.9 to start using it. So today, toString and format DateTime functions accept not necessarily constant time zone. It can be a column from a table, a string column. So you can convert your data and format in different time zones, in different records. Let's make an experiment. There is a system time zones table with all the available time zones. And I will check what places on Earth still lag behind in their time. What places lag the most? And first is a strange place named ETC GMT plus 12. Maybe it does not exist on the map, but the next is Pacific Midway. If they are watching my webinar, they will actually have to watch it earlier in local time. But okay, it works perfectly. What else? Backup log. A new system table, system.backup.log. And every time you do backup or restore, the operation will be logged. When it started, when it finished, and if it did not finish by exception, it will also be logged. So with this table, you have a catalog of every processed backup, so they will not be lost. Perfect, easy to use. It is enabled by default. Okay, something slightly more interesting. We have so many features, like a kaleidoscope of features. I don't know how to say, but I have to be quick. GCD codec, greatest common divisor. So let's imagine you store numbers in your table like decimal numbers, and you think, how many digits I should have? How many digits I should have after decimal point? And you might think, okay, maybe 10 digits, like in this example. And then you insert your data, and actually all the numbers have just 3 digits and all zeros, 7 zeros. And we have to store this data. And surprisingly, this data is not compressed good enough by default. So I made this experiment, insert some numbers, and get 9.5 megabytes of data compressed. The idea of GCD codec is to analyze these numbers, get the common divisor, like 1 million, and just divide these numbers before compression. And surprisingly, if I add this before the default compression codec, I get only 6 megabytes. So I made more experiments. LZ4 9.5 megabytes, GCD plus LZ4 6 megabytes. Surprisingly, if I use ZSTD, it is not as good as GCD plus LZ4 7 megabytes. So it is not enough to use ZSTD everywhere. And if I place GCD codec before ZSTD, I get only 4.9 megabytes. It is more than twice the compression comparing to simply using LZ4. So probably it will be useful for you, but it will be much better if you define a data type just enough for your data. Okay, what about MySQL compatibility? You know, we have to integrate with Tableau, QuickSight, Power BI, whatever boring business intelligence people for business, business intelligence system for boring business people and boring suits. And ClickHouse should work for these people with all the respect. So we have quite a lot. You can specify decimal without parameters. There are some new functions like the number of days passed since year 0. Actually year 1, but you know what it is about. Some strange function named STD. I don't like this name, but it looks like we get ClickHouse get STD from MySQL because we have to support it. Improvements for information schema and even prepared statements has some minimal support just to make Tableau working. Okay, what about boring security features? Boring security features. First, in the new release, you can create a user with temporary credentials, or just create a temporary user. And after specified time point or date, the user will not be able to log in. So it is pretty nice if you want to make a temporary access credentials pair for some API for a single shot operation. And you don't want to forget to keep it around. You want it to say deactivate after some time. Good for security. But this is way more interesting. A new authentication method. Now we support SSH key pairs. And it works like this. just specify your public key in the configuration file. Specify its type, RSA and ECDSA are supported. And when you authenticate, you can specify a path to your private key. It will ask a passphrase. It can be empty, and it works. And this feature is really great. Why it is great? So, you know, ClickHouse already have support for X509 certificates, and it works perfectly, and it is not easy to use. You have to use public key infrastructure, you have to use root certificates or internal certificates, whatever, and you have to get these huge files with these certificates. But now it is easy. So I can get your public key from GitHub, and you will be able to authenticate. I don't have to ask you anything. You have this private key. You don't show it to anyone, and I can get access to ClickHouse to you. Pretty nice. Okay, and this is unusually boring. SSO for AWS S3. When I'm working with these security features, I became dizzy because there are so strange words, so much documentation, and nothing is easy to understand. What is STS? What is IAM? How to use it? What is SSO? Or IDC, SAML, or auth? It is so difficult. Let me explain. Do you use AWS? Please answer somewhere. Maybe you use GCP, maybe you don't use clouds. Maybe you use Home Lab with FreeBSD, and it will be the best way to use ClickHouse. But okay, probably you do use AWS. Do you use SSO for your users? If you answer no, it is not good. You have insecure configuration. If you answer yes, you probably know that ClickHouse Local was not able to use temporary SSO credentials that you get when you write something like AWS SSO login. But now it works perfectly. It will pick up the environment variables, it will parse the configuration, and everything just works unsurprisingly. Yeah, this is uninteresting. Tyler, by the way, how many people use SSO?
Sorry, muted again. To quote Ricky in chat, everybody.
Not bad. Yeah. I
think fundamentally that's probably the right answer.
Okay. What about performance improvements? We have quite a few. First is about parallel reading from files. If you write something like select from file star.tsv, it was already parallel and always was parallel. But if you use ClickHouse client to import local files from INFILE star.tsv, it was not parallel. Now it is. It is a small change, but it is nice. Another optimization is for select final. If you use something unusual like summing merge tree, aggregating merge tree, replacing merge tree, And if you write select final, and it appears that the data is merged into a single part inside a partition or inside all the table. In the new version, we will avoid reading the columns for order by, and the improvement can be tremendous. If you read just a single small column, your primary key can be much larger. So it can be 10 times faster, 100 times faster, whatever. Okay, what about something interesting? Something actually nice in this release. It is again about JSON. JSON is like a bottomless topic. You can get arbitrarily complex JSON and you have to process it. And it became more and more complex, and you think how to deal with it, and you start writing some scripts. Sometimes it is not enough. Okay, let's take a look. This is just a JSON object about something. By the way, what it is about? If you can guess, where did I get this JSON object with some strange data about security TLS certificates? Please write in chat. And if you will be the first to answer correctly, I will send you this t-shirt, or maybe our new t-shirt, or maybe our exclusive ClickHouse socks. We will find something. So let's take a look. It has a few fields, IP and data, and it has some nesting, and it continues, and it continues, and this is just a single object. Let me scroll down. It looks so scary, and it is especially scary if I will need to process it. And I have a file with a few hundred millions of these objects. Okay. I will create a table with all these columns. At least I will try. And in the previous version, I had to manually specify all these columns, and it can take a day. In the new version, I can simply write something like describe file data.json. And it will look like this. It will automatically infer the data type of the structure of this table. And let me check how much nesting I have this. How many tuples? Yeah, it looks really scary. And if I look at the nesting level, this data type looks like the code in Lisp. But it is detected automatically. I don't have to write it. So let's take a look how does it work. Okay, let me show it live. I like live demos. So I have a temporary directory with a few files. The file is 0.5 gigabyte. And let me try to process it with ClickHouse local with the new version 23.9. Okay, I will just copy paste something. And first, I can query this file directly and output it back in JSON format. It works. 10 records. The records are pretty complex, but it is JSON. If I write it, say, in tab separated format, it will look not as good. It will contain a lot of tuples with nulls. Let me also try this query. And I am actually surprised that this works. So I can address and reference to all these subcolumns with just a dot notation. Data.tls.result.handshake.server certificate parsed issuer organization, and it is array, and I will get the first element. But let's start with this. Okay, here I get a large JSON. Here I get another JSON. Okay, let's not waste time. I hope it will work. It's a new release. It should work. Yes, it works. And I have some organizations for TLS certificates. Let's do aggregation across this half a gigabyte file. It is not as fast as it could be. 2 seconds. 2 seconds for half a gigabyte. It is quite decent. And the most popular SSL certificates are Let's Encrypt and DigiCert. By the way, Tyler, do we have answers about where did I get this data?
Indeed, we have a couple of answers. I'll share some of them with you. One is the guess that it's from ClickHouse Cloud. Another that this represents TCP connections. A third that this is the SSL handshake parser. And then another one that this is Rabbit Hole.
What was the last answer?
Rabbit Hole.
None of these are correct. So please continue. Continue if you have some hypothesis. It is not from ClickHouse Cloud. By the way, we use Let's Encrypt certificates. Yeah, please try to guess where did I get it. And let me continue. So 2 seconds to process. By the way, how many records? Just 65,000. So not really fast. But what is more interesting, I can actually create a table without specifying columns. I will create a table with merge tree engine with all this data. And I can select it from remote URL. Let's take a look how it will work. So I have a server on AWS with 3.5 terabytes of space. And I created this table. And it created successfully in like 40 minutes. Not as fast, but still it is 51 million records. 51 million records of this large JSON. I can't even display this large JSON. If I will do like this, it will be higher than me, and probably it will be deep, and it will be several floors deep. Okay, and if I will select from this merge tree table, how fast it will be? 0.2 seconds. So it is just instant. And it is 51 million records instead of 65,000. 1,000 times more records and 10 times faster. So 10,000 times faster is to use ClickHouse tables instead of just processing JSON on the fly. And actually, it's quite unique because I don't know any other system that makes it possible to take this deep and large and strangely structured JSON and just create a table, and it will be parsed as columns. Okay, and by the way, it is completely unrelated to the JSON data type. We did not use the JSON data type, which is still in development, and you don't have to use it. You have everything, and your data will be perfectly structured if you use this type inference. So Tyler, any more answers?
Yeah, indeed. There were two more guesses.
Yeah.
One was that we got it from Stanford, and the other was that it was the SSL transparency log.
The first answer is correct. Yeah, it is from Stanford, but it is actually does not belong to Stanford. They just scanned every IP address in IPv4 and tried to connect with TLS. And everything that the server replied now is inside ClickHouse. Okay, and this feature is even nicer. Workload scheduling, workload isolation. It looks really easy from the user standpoint. Just specify a setting, workload, with a name, like production and development, like analysts and CEO. And it will automatically separate the workload. How to separate the workload? You create a configuration with all these workload profiles, and you can limit these profiles by, say, network read. And these profiles reference to some path. What is this path? The path you specify in another configuration. And it looks like this. Every element can split the workload by first in, first output fashion by priorities. Like some workload is more important than another. And every request or every network request will be processed first by the workload with more priority. Or it can have fair scheduling that can also have some weights. You can define then that one workload is like 10 times more important than another, and it will allocate 10 out of 11 shares to one workload and 1 out of 11 to another. So this can be hierarchical, and currently you can configure it for reading from external disks like S3. It will nicely separate your queries. So one type of queries will not occupy all the bandwidth. So pretty nice. And it is documented and it is already available. I did not even expect so advanced implementation inside ClickHouse, but it is fully configurable, hierarchical, with multiple resources and multiple ways to split the workload. Good. What do we have as a bonus? What about ClickHouse integrations? There is a connector to Kafka. Not Kafka engine, but completely external integration that you can deploy inside Kafka Cloud. And it is named Kafka Connect. It is generally available with release 1.0. It happened just a few days ago. There are a few changes to Power BI support and Tableau Online with MySQL protocol. And the main point Tableau Online works with ClickHouse. There are some updates for Python and Node.js. What do we have to read? We have plenty of interesting articles, interesting blog posts in our blog, clickhouse.com/blog. The most interesting is the description of ClickHouse Keeper. ClickHouse Keeper is not a new thing. It existed for 1.5 years. It is used in production for over a year at least, maybe 2 years in some environments. It works perfectly. It is super reliable. Why don't use it instead of Zookeeper? There are no reasons to use Zookeeper anymore. Another interesting thing is ClickPipes. It's so interesting name. Do you know what is ClickPipes? If not, don't wait, just go to our blog and it will be really interesting. How to minimize latency working with Kafka. If you ingest data from Kafka to ClickHouse, how to get this data faster. It is also covered in our blog. How to optimize for massive data loads. There is an article, and even for OpenAI and ChatGPT, we have an article how to integrate ClickHouse, how to make ClickHouse more like smart or actually more stupid by plugging ChatGPT to ClickHouse. Okay, now we have 15 minutes for your questions.
Amazing. Thanks, Alexei. I'm not quite sure how you managed to compress that all into that amount of time. There are a number of questions that came in. I encourage you, whether you're on YouTube, where I'm keeping an eye on the chat there, or whether you're on the Zoom call, to drop your questions in. We're going to ask them and answer them as much as we can. First, I want to start with a note that came up in the YouTube chat, which is that the docs for the Tableau Online connection are incoming actually tomorrow. There's a couple of limitations. We'll mention them in detail there. But if Tableau Online is something that matters to you, shout out to Serge for mentioning that the docs are coming tomorrow. So a couple of questions, Alexei, a little bit sort of all over the place, which is great. The first is, does ClickHouse allow access to files in any directory when used, or just the files in the user underbar files?
There is a distinction between ClickHouse Local and ClickHouse Server. If you use ClickHouse Local, it is just a command line tool, and it can access every file that the current user has access to. You can even write something like ... etc password, and it will read this file if you, as a user, have rights to read this file, and it is entirely normal. For the server, it is entirely different. It will make sure that you can access only files inside user files directory, because otherwise it will be insecure. It will be not secure. But you can create a symbolic link from the user files directory into any other directory, like your home directory, and then you can access it. And obviously, only say system operator can create this symlink for you, so it is as secure.
Gotcha. Another question. This one actually comes from YouTube. Shout out to the YouTube engagement. I think it's more of a general question, and I'll add a little bit of context after you answer. But the question is, we're still losing some messages from Kafka by the Kafka engine if they several times attach and then detach the Kafka engine over some interval of time.
Yeah, it looks like if you detach the Kafka engine, it is unclear if the offsets will be correctly stored. So currently, the Kafka engine commits the offsets to Kafka. And we have, say, two distributed systems. ClickHouse is a distributed system. It has to commit data to replicate merge tree, communicate with keeper, make a transaction to keeper, make it atomically, and there is Kafka. It is also a distributed system. And after you read the data, you have to commit the offset to Kafka. And when two distributed systems try to work together, something could be possibly not quite okay. So please describe the particular scenario, how to observe it, how to reproduce, and we will take a look. And by the way, we are going to slightly improve the Kafka engine, so it will store offsets inside keeper, and we will not have to commit to another distributed system, and everything will be atomically and 100% always correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The only context I was going to add is that if you go to clickhouse.com/Slack, you can join our Slack group. And often that's quite helpful for questions that relate not only to general understanding and just hanging out with the community, but also environmental issues where there may be sort of a bit of back and forth. And then also, of course, if you have like a very readily reproducible use case, come to GitHub. Go to github.com/clickhouse/clickhouse, open an issue. There's a template there that will help you out. You can describe sort of the reproducible scenario, and many folk from the team will keep an eye there. Here's one that I know is near and dear to your heart, Alexei. Does ClickHouse have an option to separate compute from storage like Snowflake?
Yes, and it is really interesting. There are a couple of different scenarios how to separate storage and compute. And some scenarios can do this separation for part of your data. Some scenarios can do this separation for all your data, but with metadata still in the file system. So let's take a look. The first way is to use tiered storage with data written to the local storage and move it in background to the object storage in S3 or GCS or Azure. And when you do your query, it will read the requested data from all the locations where this data resides. So it will query S3, it will query local disks. Another possible way is to use object storage first. So you write your data. It will be written to, say, S3, and you will read it from S3. And you might think, what about latency? S3 is a complex distributed system, and when you read from S3, it will take 100 milliseconds. Sometimes it will take 500 milliseconds. And in this case, you can use the cache for remote file system on local disks. So you can use local SSDs in AWS on virtual machines of D type or I type, storage optimized. And every time data is written to S3, it will be also written to local disk. Every time it is read, it will be also it will be read from local disk if it exists in the cache. It is simpler and more optimal. And the metadata for merge tree tables is stored locally. The only quite strange and unexpected thing about this is that if you have multiple replicas, these replicas have to store data in different locations or different buckets in S3, so the data on S3 will be duplicated. There is a specific feature named zero copy replication that is under development and not ready to use. So if you use separation of storage and compute, currently the only way is to either use a single replica or duplicate data in multiple buckets, which is actually expected if you use a multi-region setup. One region will write to a local bucket, another region to another local bucket. I can talk about the separation of storage and compute for probably hours.
As I said, I know it's near and dear to your heart. For the person who asked that question, if you have further questions about it, like I said, feel free to hit us up in the community. Here's an interesting one, Alexei. There's sort of two left that I'll hit on. There's more, but there's two that I'll focus on. This one says, I'd like to have a short discussion about the Python ClickHouse connector. We're running a proof of concept on ClickHouse, and I'm working on a bulk ingestion where the data comes from a pandas data frame. I'm using the method client.insert_df, presumably data frame. However, I'm seeing some data types mismatch where int32 bang is not equal to int32, or similarly int64 is not equal to int64. Is there a way that they can do, that you know of, a data type mapping between pandas data frame and ClickHouse data types?
This is a really good question for our integrations team. And
Indeed.
especially, yeah, for Jeff, who is the author of the Python driver, or for Mikhail Shustov.
So to the person who asked that question, hi, I see you. I'll grab the details. I'll share them with the integrations team, and then I'll actually reach out to you directly and let you know what I hear back from them. Or join Slack and DM me and remind me, but I'll find it. I'll get you an answer, and then I'll reach out directly. And then, given that we're coming up on time, Alexei, here's a fun one that's near and dear to my heart. Is consistent hashing as a sharding approach coming anytime soon?
First, we want to make resharding possible. And we want to make it possible regardless of the sharding schema. So if you have random sharding, when you just write your data to any of shards, it should be possible to split data inside partitions and make these partitions automatically moved and remapped between shards. And if we will do this, if we will make it possible, we can also add consistent hashing just as an optimization to minimize the amount of moved data. This is what consistent hashing for. And we already prepared the required primitives. We have the functions for consistent hashing, such as jump consistent hash or even caustic consistent hash. It is really nice function. I advise you to take a look. So hopefully, yeah, in the roadmap for next year, and we will get it.
So one more just came in that I'll just call out. In February, Alexei, on GitHub, you opened an issue for the delayed reading of columns. And the question was, it sounded like maybe that's actually fixed according to the slide with final and about performance. And the question was whether you could confirm that. And I mean, maybe the best answer is let's take it to issue 45868. But if you happen to know off the top of your head or remember the delayed reading of columns issue.
Yeah, sure, I remember it. And I can confirm that we did not implement this feature. It is really nice potential of performance optimization. And I know how it should work inside, and we still have to make it. It's really interesting. It's about say, postponing reading of columns after order by. You do a query, there is a large column, and you don't read it. You just imagine that you have to read this column. And after order by, you decide on which ranges from this column you will read. I'm still waiting for people who will be really interested in implementing it.
Alexa, I can't help myself. Just one more, because every question spawns another one, which is great. Is there any news on sharded maps for large maps?
Yeah, it is in progress. It was postponed in favor of some other tasks. By the way, in favor of supporting real-time updates and deletes from merge tree. And after this implementation, we will be able to continue on sharded maps. It should be really fine for really nice for semi-structured data.
Amazing. Well, we're at time. For all of you who are on Zoom, we appreciate you. For all of you on YouTube, we appreciate you as well, if not more so. For those of you who watch this in the future, thanks for joining us. Fundamentally, the best part about the monthly community call for me is questions and answers, because we have the opportunity to address the things that you're thinking about. But I want you to know that that opportunity exists every day. Come to ClickHouse.com, join the Slack, follow us on whatever the social media platform that used to be shaped like a bird is called. Join our GitHub. Ask the questions that you have, and someone from the team will do our best to make sure that they are answered. Also, when we have the opportunity, we love to highlight what the community is building on these calls. So if you have a cool project that you want to share, that you want to show off, let me know. I'm Tyler at ClickHouse.com. We'd love to have the opportunity for you to highlight what you are working on. And lastly, we have another, I think, 15 meetups coming between now and the end of the year. You can go to ClickHouse and look at our news and events, or just go to meetup.com/pro/ClickHouse. And I look forward to seeing all of you in just another month. Be well, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.